The buggy was already at the end of the dirt road when I came in from the garden. I had been pulling weeds from the carrot beds, the kind of slow, mindless work that lets your thoughts wander, and mine had wandered far that afternoon. To the next singing, to a boy named Samuel from the district over, who had a way of laughing that made the whole room feel lighter. I came through the back door with dirt under my fingernails and mud on the hem of my dress, and my father was sitting at the kitchen table. He did not look up. He said a name I had spoken maybe a dozen words to in my entire life. He said, November. I was 17 years old, and the rest of my life had just been arranged in a room I was not invited into, by men whose authority I had been taught since birth never to question. I stood there with the garden still on my hands, and something inside me went very quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that comes when a door closes and you hear the lock turn from the other side. Before I tell you what happened on my wedding night, the decision I made in that small, lamp-lit room that no one in my community has ever known about, not my mother, not the women who raised me, not the bishop who blessed my vows. I need you to understand who I was before that night changed me. My name is Sarah, and this channel exists because the stories that shaped me were never meant to be spoken out loud. I grew up old order Amish in a community most people have only ever seen through a car window. The buggies, the plain dresses, the quiet fields. And what I am about to tell you happened in a farmhouse less than 50 miles from where tourists stop to take photographs and smile at how simple everything looks. If this kind of truth matters to you, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because there is so much more I have not said yet, and I need you here to say it. What most people do not understand about Amish marriage, especially in the more conservative districts, is that the official story and the real story are two very different things. Officially, young people choose each other. The singings, the buggy rides home, the slow and careful courtship that the community presents to the outside world, all of that is real for some, for many even. But there is another version of marriage that happens quietly in kitchens and barns and front rooms, and nobody puts it on the tourist brochure. It happens when a family has too many daughters and not enough land. It happens when a bishop nods over coffee at a name he considers suitable. It happens when a boy's family has an inheritance waiting and needs a wife to make it function, and a girl's father sees stability where his daughter sees a stranger. There is no formal contract. There is no written arrangement. But when the parents agree and the bishop approves and the community begins to expect it, a girl's choice becomes something very close to fiction. You can refuse, technically, but refusing means shaming your father in front of every person whose opinion shapes your daily survival. It means becoming the girl who thought she knew better than her parents and the bishop and God himself, as they defined him, in a world where your home, your food, your friendships, and your sense of eternal belonging all depend on your place within the community. That kind of refusal is not really a choice. It is only the illusion of one. He was 24. His name was Jonas, and he had a farm coming to him from an uncle who had no sons. He was not unkind. I want to say that plainly because the story I am telling you is not about a cruel man. He was quiet and serious, with careful hands and a manner that suggested he had been taught to be responsible long before he was ready for it. During our 2 supervised courtship visits, he asked me what hymns I favored. He asked about my garden. He was performing his part of a script that neither of us had written. I performed mine. I answered his questions with my voice while my real self stood somewhere slightly behind my eyes, watching 2 strangers rehearse a life together.
I had been through bundling with him exactly twice, fully clothed, silent, stiff as two people waiting for something neither of them wanted to name. I tried, in those weeks, to picture 60 years beside him. Every time I did, my chest tightened in a way I did not have words for. I thought about Samuel, the boy who made me laugh. His name was not spoken in my house after the announcement. It did not need to be. Some things are buried without ceremony. The morning of my wedding, I woke before 4 and was sick in the dark. My mother came in with a damp cloth and pressed it to my forehead and said what mothers in our world have always said, that every bride feels this way, that it passes, that it is only nerves before the blessing. She meant it with her whole heart. I know that now. But I looked at her in the thin light of that single candle and understood that she genuinely could not see what I was feeling. Because in our world, what I was feeling did not have a name. There was no language for I do not want this. There was only obedience, or there was disgrace. The ceremony lasted more than 3 hours. The bishop preached on the duties of a wife from Scripture. I had heard so many times the words had worn smooth, like stones in a creek bed. I sat in my blue dress on the hard bench with my hands folded in my lap, and I made my vows in front of God and nearly 300 people, and my voice did not shake. I had learned by then how to make my voice do what was required of it. I had learned how to keep my real self very still and very quiet behind the face everyone expected to see. My father shook Jonas's hand for a long time after. My new mother-in-law called me daughter and pulled me into her arms. And then the afternoon stretched, and the sun went down, and the guests who had traveled far began settling into the rooms of my parents' house for the night. Because in our tradition, the bride does not leave immediately. And so, when Jonas and I climbed the narrow stairs to the small room my mother had prepared, the house was full of sleeping people. The walls were thin, the floors creaked with every step. Privacy on an Amish wedding night is a quiet joke everyone pretends not to understand. He closed the door behind us. The kerosene lamp threw a warm, unsteady circle of light across the floorboards. He took off his black coat and hung it carefully on the back of the chair, the way a man does when he is trying to appear calm. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still in my wedding dress, and I felt the full weight of everything. The 4 months, the vows, the 300 witnesses, the 60 years ahead, pressed down onto my chest all at once. He sat beside me. The bed creaked beneath us. Somewhere below, a man laughed at something, and the sound floated up through the thin ceiling like it belonged to another world. Jonas reached for my hand. His hand was warm, calloused at the palm. He said very quietly, "Are you all right?" And I broke. Not gently. Not the soft, grateful tears a bride is permitted on her wedding night. I cried from somewhere I had never let anyone see. Deep, heaving, breathless crying. The kind that does not stop when you press your hands against your face. The kind that has been waiting for months behind a voice that was always doing what it was required to do. And Jonas did not pull away. He did not call for my mother. He did not tell me to compose myself. He simply sat beside me on that creaking bed in that lamp-lit room, and he waited, with a steadiness I had not expected from a man I did not know, until I could finally speak. And when I could, I said the only true thing I had said in 4 months. I said it in Pennsylvania Dutch because it was the only language my grief knew in that moment. I said, I did not want this. They did not ask me. I waited for his anger. I waited for the consequences I had been rehearsing in my mind since November. Instead, after a silence so long the lamp seemed to dim inside it, he said 2 words. I know. And then he said them again, more quietly. I know, Sarah. And then he told me something I had not imagined. He told me he knew because they had not asked him either. There had been a girl named Ruth from his own district, a girl he had hoped to court for almost 2 years before her family matched her with someone else. His uncle's farm needed a wife by spring. His parents had considered my family suitable. He'd said yes to my name the same way I had said yes to his. Not because he chose it, but because everything around him had made any other answer impossible. He told me he had cried alone in the barn the week the engagement was announced. He told me he had watched my face during the ceremony and known from the careful stillness of it that I felt exactly as he did. He told me all of this in a low, even voice, while the laughter drifted up from the floor below, and I listened, and something shifted in the room. Something neither of us could have named, but both of us felt. So on my wedding night, in that small room, with the house full and the lamp burning low, we made an agreement that no bishop would have blessed and no parent would have understood. We agreed that we would not be intimate that night. We agreed that we would lie down side by side, fully clothed, with space between us, and that we would let everything else wait until it grew on its own, if it ever did. We agreed that what happened inside our bedroom was ours, and that the community did not own it. It was the first decision I had made about my own life in 4 months. It was the first decision either of us had made about this marriage at all. I lay awake for most of that night, listening to him breathe beside me, feeling the strangeness of a body I did not know but had promised my life to. I thought about my mother sleeping somewhere in this same house, about the damp cloth and the candle, and it will pass. I thought about the girl I had been that morning, and the woman I was now, and the impossible distance between them. And I felt something I had not expected. Not love, not yet, nothing so large as that, but something quieter and more durable. The first thin thread of trust. The understanding that I was not, after all, completely alone in this. We stayed married for nearly 7 years. Something grew between us during those years that I am still not sure I have the right word for. Not romance in the way the songs describe it. Not passion, but something real and load-bearing. The kind of thing you build slowly in the dark with no instructions. He learned that I needed an hour alone every morning to feel like myself. I learned that he carried his uncle's expectations like a stone in his coat pocket, heavy and constant. We talked in the evenings in a way our parents never had with each other. We became, slowly and imperfectly, friends. When I finally left the community at 24, Jonas was the one who drove me to the bus station before dawn. He had known for almost a year that I needed to go. He cried when he let me go. I cried too. He never fully shunned me after. Twice a year, a card would arrive. No return address, just my name in his careful handwriting. He died 4 years ago in a farming accident, and I learned about it from an English neighbor who had found my number. I cried for a week, not because I had been in love with him the way that word is used in the world I live in now, but because he had been the only person in that entire closed world who had ever asked me how I actually felt, and then waited in the quiet and the lamplight for the real answer. If you grew up in a place where your future was decided in rooms you were never invited into, I see you. If you ever stood somewhere with dirt on your hands while the shape of your life was being arranged without you, I see you. The voice inside you that whispered, I did not want this, was not weakness. It was not faithlessness. It was the truest thing in the room. Listen to it now, even if you could not listen to it then. Subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and come back for the next story, because there is so much more that was never meant to be said out loud, and I'm only just beginning to say it.